even if you're better than every other foreign speaker, you're going to be at least behind 100 million.
政治のこと話してますと。それで私がついていけなかったら、やばい。もっと勉強しないとってなるよ。
Welcome to the Lazy Fluency podcast, where we have casual conversations switching between English and Japanese, so that you can learn from and with us along the way. I'm Joey.
And I'm Yami.
And the topic of the day is perfectionism. But before we get into that, make sure to like, subscribe, follow, and drop a review on whatever platform you're listening on. We appreciate the support. And with that out of the way, perfectionism. Learning languages is hard, and sometimes the way we handle mistakes along the way can make them even more difficult. Today we're talking about perfectionism, specifically focused on language learning. I'm not sure, you kind of sparked this episode topic unintentionally when you recently went to... Oh, go ahead.
そうだね。recently went to っていうか、昨日なんだけど、昨日、その友達とボードゲームをしましたと。はい。で、やっぱり英語ってさ、一つのアクセントだけじゃないじゃん。アメリカだったり、オーストラリア、ニュージーランド、イギリス、あと他にどこあったっけ、カナダとかね。
Yeah.
そうそう。いろいろあるわけ。で、それプラスに、セカンドオフィシャルラングエッジにしてる国とかもあるじゃん。シンガポールとかもそうかな。
Yeah.
シンガポールとか、あと
Singapore is Singlish, technically.
そうか。ね。でも、イングリッシュっちゃハーフぐらい。
Yeah.
そうね。そうとか、で、あともう一つは、そうね、英語を、教育で結構ちっちゃい頃から受けてるヨーロッパとかの人たちはそうなのかな？
Yeah, a lot of Europe.
そうそう。で、たくさんのアクセントがあるわけですよ。で、一つのアクセントに慣れてしまうと、他のやつが、なんか、ってなっちゃって、やっぱまだまだ勉強が足りないな、みたいな、そう思ったから、やっぱね、自分はまだまだだなって思っちゃうわけよ。はい。多分、共感してくれる人いたら嬉しいなっていう、そう。
Yeah, so the difficulty of, or I guess in this case, the perfectionism is relating to Ayami's perceived ability or difficulty with other accents. I think specifically an Australian accent, but something that I've encountered multiple times, and I feel like many language learners encounter multiple times, is this feeling or desire to not want to make any mistakes, and also have this idea that they want to achieve this vague notion of fluency. And there are a lot of ways that people define fluency, whether it be you're using there's a European model that it's called like A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2.
レベルみたいな感じ。
Yeah, they're just 6 different levels. They basically describe general ideas of what you can do or what you should be able to do to be in a different category. But there's a bunch of ones for Japanese specifically. There's Japan has its own Nihongo Kente Shiken, which is for Japanese people. And then there's the Nihongo Noryoku Shiken, which is for foreigners.
日本語能力試験が for foreigners.
Yeah.
そうね。
Yeah, and then the Kente Shiken is for native speakers of Japanese. The funny thing is, both of those tests don't actually test speaking. But maybe that's a whole separate thing. So the other aspect, so I, at times, I guess I would be considered a fairly, when I'm competing with myself, I'm fairly competitive. I don't tend to be as overtly maybe competitive, or you could say have any animosity towards anybody I'm competing with. Maybe that's just as a result of a lot of the sports I've done have just physically hurt doing them. So I'm less concerned about the other people and more concerned about me being able to not die with whatever I'm doing. But with language learning, especially Japanese language learning, and this is something that you might not be as familiar with, but as opposed to other language communities that I think I've come across, well, not I think I've come across, that I have come across. I've talked to people who are learning French and their community, as well as Chinese learners, although there's a bit with this in the Chinese sphere as well. I've talked to people learning Korean, I've talked to people learning Russian, and I don't know what it is about the Japanese learning community, but there's this extremely, what I'll call toxic mindset that I think is pervasive throughout a lot of the community that is centered around this idea of perfectionism, or like not the idea that just well, this is that was something that was being asked about as well by Oddity, which we'll get to the comment at the end of the episode, but I guess maybe we can tackle it here, which is not only with like perfectionism and pronunciation, but perfectionism in terms of everything. In terms of, if you don't know a word, then you should feel bad, or not that you should feel bad, but you should know more. Like, you should know the words, if that makes any sense. Like, the feeling of like this reminded me of an English teacher class. I don't know, the first time I learned this word was flogging, which is hitting yourself on the back with like this whip sort of type thing that with Christian community. Yeah, it's called flogging. You basically like when you sin, you hit yourself on the back with like this whip.
みたいな感じか。
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I guess I'm just going to talk about my thoughts on the subject, and then hear, I guess, Aimi's thoughts as well on the subject. So personally speaking, for me, with my, or I guess maybe I'll just talk about something that I feel like is a problem that almost anyone encounters when they get into this idea of perfectionism, or just subconsciously this idea of perfectionism within language learning, which is, what is your goal? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, what would you describe your goal as for English?
ゴールは何だろうね。私はまあ日常会話もできるようになりたいし、でもやっぱり将来やっぱ医者になってその患者さんとか、いろんな人が見れるようになりたいから、やっぱり専門的なネイティブでも分かんないような言葉あるじゃん、医学用語、メディカルタームズで。そういうのもできるようになったらいいけど、でもそれはすごい努力が必要で普通の
What does it mean for you to be able to do them? できるようになった。What does that look like?
もうだからもう
How do you know when you've reached that?
あれじゃない、例えば論文とかティーセスを何も調べないで読めるようになるとか、あとカンファレンスとかで言ってること全部わかるとか、そういうレベルでもうアドバンスすぎて、それはだけど普通にそれは仕事だから、日常生活に関しては海外に行って困らない、もう普通に暮らせるようなレベルにはなりたい。はい、それがゴール。
So something every time, I mean, when I hear those goals or things like that, so you say listen to one conference, or listen to, or do this or whatever. You choose one task. I guess I'll just talk about my experience here. So this morning, for those who don't know, I'm a native English speaker. Technically, my first language is Spanish, but I am a native English speaker. And this morning, I was watering plants, and this happens all the time. I couldn't remember, and I still don't even know, and I could look it up. There's probably some word for like the jug of water with like the little spout at the end that you pour to water plants.
Shower head.
It's for shower heads for like when you're showering yourself. I don't know if the actual whole device, I don't remember what it's called. And the thing is, as I'm not an active learner of English, I just don't care. I just let it slide. Like, and this happens so often. Actually, now I think the more I'm monitoring, that is the linguistic term, which is actively thinking about and focusing on your speech and what you're saying, the more I realize that in my language that is the most advanced, not only do I not look up words a lot of the time, do I not know words a lot of the time, I just really don't, I just let it slide off me. If I can't remember a word, I just leave it as it goes. And anybody, and I feel like this is the same thing with everybody speaking their native language, if they're being honest with themselves, where like right there, I said, I paused. That's something you could improve on. Like, even basically my point is, even as a native speaker, or even if grad school level or whatever level you get to, whether you're the best presenter in the world, people always set, and humans always set higher goals. And so when Aimi says, like, I want to be able to listen to a presentation or whatever without looking up any of the words, my bet is if she listened to another presentation that had other words and she didn't know them, then she'd want to know those words too. And with one of my recent examples I have is me wanting to, this is something I'm enjoying, so this is really a goal, whatever. So I've been reading Legend of Galactic Heroes, Ginga Eiyu Densetsu. And before then, I'd say like most like novels, light novels, all the stuff I got pretty comfortable reading. And Gingae Yudensetsu was like a huge jump up to the in like, well, maybe I should say it's been a while since I was like actively felt like, wow, this is actually very hard to read, and I had to stop and like pull out a dictionary and figure out what words they're saying and like what kanji is this, and so I was like, wow, I feel like I'm like reverting back in my Japanese. And then I showed the book to Ayumi, and Ayumi, what is your reaction to Gingae Yudensetsu?
まずなんかね、私国語が苦手だからまず興味ないなと思ったのと、あと漢字が多すぎて、あと当て字が多すぎてちょっと無理って思った。
And there wasn't just you. There was somebody else with us, right? That we also looked at Gingae Yudensetsu.
Yeah.
And what did they say?
I'm not gonna say the name here だけど。
Yeah, or I'm just saying another native Japanese speaker. Basically had a very similar reaction where he said like, this book actually isn't meant to be read. It's you're just supposed to pull up a dictionary beside it while you're reading. So two native speakers of Japanese basically are like, this book is not meant to be read. This is a frustrating book, and I'm over here feeling frustration.
Okay. そういう文学っていうのはさ、やっぱすごい文豪の人たちが、俺これだけ言葉知ってるんだ、すげえだろみたいな感じのでたくさん言葉を詰め込んでるだけだと思ってるから、シェイクスピアとかもそうでしょ。なんかね、あの人すごい一番世の中で一番言葉を知ってる人みたいな感じじゃん、確か。
I mean, maybe there was that impression. The only point I was trying to get at is I'm over here feeling frustration about something as a non-native speaker of a language who started learning when I was in college, about something that native speakers struggle with. And this is a native speaker one who's like both, one of them is a med school student, the other one's also a college graduate student as well. And so, but this is only talking about my point about perfectionism never ends. There is no end to perfectionism. And so the way I view it is putting goals like that, maybe with some stuff works. Like I'll speak, I ran track, and if you set time goals specifically, you can achieve them. And yeah, you can set later goals or whatever down the line. But they're very concrete and achievable goals that you can tell once you've achieved them, and you can win a race and you can feel really good. But with language learning, I personally feel a lot of those goals are just counterproductive to learning and just put more stress on the learner.
そうね。まあでも勉強全体なんていうの、language learning に限らず全体的に言えるじゃん。別にまあ history とかはあれかもしれないけどさ、サイエンスとかだったらさ never ending だからさ、まあ勉強っていう概念自体がさ、もうなんだろう、無限な気がする。
Yeah, I mean, it's not just science. Yeah, it's just learning. Like learning literally. There is no point, which especially people who like to learn, like people who are learning Japanese second language, especially as an American. Like you don't need to do that. There's no need for you to do that. You're doing that. You're doing that just because you want to. Basically, at any level for most people, and some desire. And so it's like, and that's just another language. There are there are more languages than two languages in the world, as everybody knows. And so if there's infinite complexity within one language, the same is true with another language that you're learning, especially when it's as different as your language to another language. And so I guess how I view Japanese, and although I've had midterm goals and long-term goals just to propel myself forward, I've always been more interested in, or not really, I don't know, interest is the right word, just following what my interests are and engaging with them and focusing more on, this is a cliche, but the journey of language learning more so than any specific goal. And I felt that to me, as long as you have some way to track a sense of progress, that the person finds to be a valuable information, that depends on the person, whatever. I feel like as long as you have that, then that's kind of the most important thing. Unless you need it, obviously, if you need to get a certain test for a job interview, then you need to get a test for a job interview. But and like I mean like do you have any English speaking goals, for example?
いやだ
Like
から
when
日常
you
生
talked
活
about comprehending. You talked about comprehension.
日常生活で困らない。例えばさ、
Okay,
私は
you've definitely cleared that though. Like you know what I'm saying? There have been conversations where you've been perfectly fine with everyday conversation.
いやだって海外で生活というか長期間生活したことないから、スーパーとかもなんかそういうシステムとかも買い方とかも全然わかんないし、こういう時はこういう言い方するとか、例えばこのお肉を何グラム何セット欲しいとかさ、そういうのは全然知らないから、そういうのってやっぱり実際経験しないとわからないじゃん。多分日本語習ってる人もさ、レジでなんて言うとかさ、多分来ないとわからないじゃん。レジ袋いらないですとかさ、お釣りはいらないです。まあ言わないと思うけど、なんかそういうフレーズって実際やらないとわかんないから、なんかそういうのってやっぱり、普段勉強しててわかんないからね、どうすればいいのかなっていうのは思ってる。
I'm personally speaking, I don't think, for one, I think there have been plenty of times where you've been able to get through with everyday conversation. And the second thing is, what counts as everyday conversation is extremely subjective. Obviously, going to a restaurant or whatever, or sorry, not a restaurant, like a super, and going to a checkout is something that people do. But that's a very small subset of words. If you really wanted to, you know what I'm saying, you would learn those words.
なんか旅行英会話とかもあるもんね。そういうなんかセットフレーズが全部バーって載ったやつとかあるけど。
Oh, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean by that. I'm saying, for example, so I'm into anime, as you know, as everyone I think knows at this point. And so I watch anime. And so let's say my goal is to understand anime. Well, because I'm into anime, it naturally will be easier for me to eventually learn anime because I'm always inputting anime. So, okay, let's go back to your example. You're saying you really want to know how to check out at a register.
とかさ、
My point is,
あとレストランとかで、お会計お願いしますとか、お皿下げてくださいとか、なんていうかわかんないじゃん。実際やったことないし。
Sure. So, how hard, like, okay, I guess what I'm trying to get out is this desire that you're expressing seems like a very weak desire that doesn't seem like it's relevant to the majority of how you actually experience English. Like most of the time you're watching English, it's like watching Netflix or talking and hanging out with people. Right? It's not going to the supermarket. Like the supermarket is a very achievable goal, honestly, if you wanted to.
違うよ。だから、その国、だから英語喋る国にいないとできないじゃん。日本でさ、日本でその練習できるわけないじゃん。
I mean, you totally could listen to something if you were interested in that. You know what I'm saying? Food, if you're listening to like a food podcast or something, those terms would probably come up. But I feel like this is a little bit of a tangent. My main point is, maybe I'll use another example that happened recently. So this was about, I don't know, a month ago. So I'm really into board games and card games. That's why I made a video on it. Watch that if you haven't seen it. It's like the least popular videos in lazyfluency, but I enjoyed making the video. Yeah. But anyways, so I had to explain rules in Japanese for the first time for this game. And although I've like can understand and heard them before, I never like spoken them myself. And so I went through there and it was like a little stumbly, but I got through. And then next time I think I met the same one of Ayami's friends and I gave a rule explanation of a different game. And I quickly learned all the terms related to this board games and rolling dice and whatever. And she's like, wow, you really got like fluent or something, or no, what was it? You're like your Japanese perfect from like the last time I talked about you. I can't remember what she said.
Got better みたいな感じだった。
No, but she mentioned it like 3 or 4 times. You're like, wow, I just remember that. And I was like, and from my perspective, I was like,
she was just being nice. I don't know.
I was like the only word that I didn't know from the last time, or not the word, was like 3 or 4 words that had to do with like, using the right the right verb with rolling dice, and then placing a card face down versus placing a card face up. That was like it. And just from that one, those two phrases, her idea of my language, like, and whatever, the language, how she perceived it was like, wow, he just went like, where did that come from? Like, where was this Japanese coming from? This is all to say, like, even in they're okay. So like, if we were to talk about Japanese, about American politics, or even Japanese politics in Japanese, I would feel like you would have a problem doing that, even though it's your native language. Yeah, I'm saying if we were to talk about Japanese politics in and you're in Japanese, I feel like you would have a problem doing that. And the only reason I mention this is because
I would have problems.
Exactly. Because you have no interest in Japanese politics. Most people don't. But you don't actually see that as a problem, right? You know what I'm saying?
まあそれは
Even though you're yeah.
なんだろう。いや、常識として知ってないといけないって。知るべきだったら知るけど、なんかどうでもよかったらいいかなみたいな。あと、まあ、そうね。漢字で予想はできるっちゃできる。わかんなくても。
No, but we're speaking though right now. I'm saying we're not talking about kanji.
ああ、そういうことね。まあ、
Yeah.
どうでもよかったらそのまますっ飛ばすけどね。
Yeah, no. So that's kind of my point. But so that's kind of how you feel to your with your native language. But if I said for English, would you feel frustrated that you can't talk about? We've actually had this discussion before because I've talked about politics and other stuff, and you felt frustrated that you didn't entirely know what the conversation was about, talking about American politics. But the thing is, you're not frustrated about that with Japanese, right? Like you don't care about it when it comes to Japanese.
例えばその友達同士で政治のこと話してますと。それで私がついていけなかったら、やばい、もっと勉強しないとってなるよ。それは。
But is that related to your Japanese ability?
うん。
You're thinking that you're Japanese specifically.
自分の知識不足だと思って、やばい、やっぱ自分ダメだみたいになるよ。私は。それは別
I'm trying to emphasize, is that something, there's a knowledge and then there's your Japanese ability. You know what I'm saying?
Japanese ability は
Are you questioning your Japanese ability because you're not able to have a conversation? Okay, well you might be a flogger.
なんでかっていうと、結構国語が苦手だから、この言葉知らないんだってなって、やっぱ自分ダメなんだって思っちゃうから、私は。
Okay, so maybe this is an intervention for IME. Because personally, go ahead.
なんかそう、昨日のボードゲームで結構普段使わないような言葉がさ、ゲームの中であるじゃん。例えばその建物だったらなんか宮殿はわかるか、パレスだけど、なんか例えばじゃあ鉱石でいいや、鉱石は ore じゃん。
Yeah.
そんな言葉知らないからさ、最初さ、何言ってんのか分かんなくて、鉱石 ore なんだとか思って、で他のやつもどんどん出てきて、これは私勉強しないとやばいなみたいになったから、そういう時にいつも勉強不足を感じる。
I mean, I do recall, I think from our previous conversations, that I would qualify you of having a perfectionism problem. Because for me, personally speaking, nowadays, especially with Japanese and learning, or just in general, I tend to treat everything like I treated my English, my pot, my watering jug. And I feel like it's made my whole learning process not only more effective, because this is a whole separate conversation that goes in linguistics into, there's a person called Stephen Krashen who has done, what's it called? Well, he's a researcher, linguistic researcher, and they've done, and he's referenced other people. There's a lot of people in the space, and they've looked at what are like things that inhibit language learning, and they frame it from that perspective. So, or I guess you can frame it as another perspective. There are two things that help language learning, and one of them that inhibits it. And one of it's basically time, the attitude of the learner, and then what is it? Time. Wait, what's it? Time, attitude, the learner, and I think and then the negative one is how they feel about. Oh no, attitude, the learner is the one negative one, and then it's like time. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on the other stuff. I think it's just like input or something like that. Like time spent and then like the actual content you're going through and then how you feel about yourself. And basically, if you are feeling negatively about the language or about your process learning the language, it will affect everything. It's like the most important thing. So if you come and every time you get a word wrong, let's say when I'm reading Legend of the Galactic Heroes, every time I don't know the word, let's say I get extremely frustrated. And I'm like, I don't want to do this. Is awful. I should know this. I should know this word. Why don't I know what space beam refraction is or whatever the word is? If I feel like that, yeah, no, but you're saying the same thing with politics. Like, so I feel like you would feel bad in this sense if you cared about Legend of the Galactic Heroes. My point is, if I went through like that, not only it will literally slow down from like a biological perspective my learning, as well as just make it from a subjective experience way more stressful. As what I'm doing now is I just read with the flow. I maybe just because I enjoy Japanese specifically, but I enjoyed learning all these really specific words, and now I'm able to. I mean, I'm still not as comfortable as I was with, like, you know what I'm saying, I'd say like high school or even like lower college level Japanese writing. Legend of Galactic Heroes feels like it's for like grad school post. I don't even know what the level who's supposed to be reading this, but it's gotten way more comfortable, and I feel like I actually enjoy reading it once I got over that hill. And I feel like a big portion of that, because I think Ayumi was pointing out, is like you're just reading the first page and you got so frustrated that you closed the book.
まあでも私も多分そうなると思う。銀河英雄伝説っていうなんかね、素晴らしい造語のオンパレードみたいな本がね。
Yeah.
造語ばっかだよね。
Yeah. No, my only point is that, and this has been a very generalized episode, because I feel like we could talk about a specific thing of Japanese. We could talk about handwriting. We could talk about pitch accent. We'll talk about a little bit in the end of the episode. We could talk about, let's say, there's so many stuff in Japanese. You talk about kanji. You could talk about people's like katakana pronunciation. That's a whole like separate small thing about how that can be a little more difficult for like native English speakers. I've made a rant about that. We could talk, what else is different for Japanese? We could talk about dialects. Like every one of those things I just mentioned, you could spend as much time as you want becoming a world master at, and you would still be worse than hundreds of thousands of people, whatever. Language learning is one of the funny things where a lot of people, this is, I guess, one of the last things I want to say, unless you have specific thoughts, is like, as a secondary language speaker, at the end of the day, you're just, if you put your goal as being perfect or being like the best at something, you're going to be 130, especially, let's talk about Japanese. You're going to be, Japan's population, 127 million, whatever. You're always going to be, even if you're better than every other foreign speaker, you're going to be at least behind 100 million in terms of... And so I always find it so goofy, where it like, and from your perspective, I guess we could talk, how much do you care about the ability of the Japanese speaker when they're speaking to you? I'm saying, let's say like an Australian person you're talking about, your friends, whatever. Do you feel angry at them? Do you feel frustrated when someone speaks Japanese wrong? What is your impression when somebody speaks Japanese wrong?
勉強してるんだ。頑張ってるね。ちょっと、なんていうの？助詞っていうの、のとかわとか、がとか、あれ助詞って言うんだっけ？
Yeah, particles.
そう。とか、まあ、たまに違う人がいるじゃん。ね。書き言葉で。書いてるときに。違うけど、まあ、言いたいことわかるから、まあ、かわいいんじゃないみたいな感じだよね。そう。
Yeah, okay, so that was Ayumi as a perspective. Where from the perspective of learners, especially I feel like in the Japanese community at times, it goes, people straight up are having existential crises about, which is the small thing, is getting wa and ga mixed up, getting, like not being able to read a specific kanji, changing their polite, like using the wrong, politeness setting. I don't know what you even call those in Japanese, like the wrong honorific set.
待ってじゃあ聞いてもいい？じゃあ例えばさ、日本人でいいや、外国人が英語をその勉強してて、まあ結構間違えるじゃん。それに対してそれを聞いたときどう思う？ なんかさっきの逆の質問。
Literally, it just doesn't need. So English is one of those things. Maybe this might be like a language bias thing, but there's so many speakers of English, like second language speakers, tertiary, it's their fourth, fifth language. The thing is, from the perspective of the person who's always speaking to somebody else and is not the active learner, you're just trying to communicate.
So
You're just trying to communicate. Like it, and which is to say, like with English, it's very like that's all at least I care about, and I feel like a lot of people care about. And I feel like language learners can sometimes create this monster in their head when at the end of the day, once you've had a conversation with something, like I don't really think there's any moment that somebody will like, especially with speaking or something, where somebody's like, I have done it. I no longer need to improve with my Japanese speaking. I've spoken in this setting and I've cleared it. And yeah, I don't know. I guess.
じゃあ、ここでこの人、こういう間違いしたとかは思わなくて、なんか伝わったらスーって抜けてる感じなの。
Yeah. I mean, I don't even really pay attention to their. Yeah, no. It's just not. It really doesn't even cross my mind. I can just tell what accent somebody has, but like I said, there's so many speakers of the same, like from the same location, whether it be Indian speakers or whatever. Like there's some accents you recognize, but I just, in terms of, that was a grammar mistake or something like that, it just doesn't register. I'm just all about trying to go through the conversation. And it's just not, it's not even productive. I just don't even know. But hopefully you guys found this conversation interesting. We've done a language podcast, and I don't really know how much we've talked about language, except maybe in the beginning episode.
1周年後にね、話すっていうね。
Yeah. So let us know, what are your thoughts about perfectionism and language learning?
We are back.
戻りました。
Yeah. So in this section, today I'm gonna talk about tips for karaoke. Karaoke. Why is it pronounced like that? Karaoke. That's weird.
アメリカ人の癖だから。
カラオケです。Yes. So like, many people go to karaoke, when you visit Japan, and sometimes you get ripped off. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about tips. So
これはカラオケというよりも、どうやってなんていうかコスパ的に出かけられるってことだよね。
コスパ高く。コスパよく出かけられるか。Yeah. So like, karaoke can be used for many purposes. Like, of course, obviously you can sing, and you can use the space to do something else, like studying, I don't know, talking, playing board games, playing games, something like that. And if you want to use the room, I think you have to choose the right place, because like some places, they set the price, but they don't include, how do I say, like one
Drinks?
drink, one drink, or you have to order at least one drink. So they
でもそれ
separate
どうぞ。
ね the price.
Charges.
So charges. They don't show the ねその prices for ね one
そう
drink.
1時間だったらその1000円だけ書いてあるのに、実際だと何でしたっけ、
+600
ドリンク買わなくちゃいけないから
600
円も追加されちゃうとか。
Yeah, exactly.
まあこれは経験からの話だから。何でしたっけ、多分40分から1時間だけなのに3500円ぐらいかかっちゃった。
No, that's like for two people, right?
そう、私たちだった。
Yeah, so, but yesterday I went to karaoke box, and it was free time, so we went there like we stayed there for 5.5 hours, about 5.5 hours, and it was only 1,300 yen, which is so cheap, and you get free drinks. So
その5時間ぐらいずっと
飲み放題。Yeah. So yeah. And so that was 歌広場っていうカラオケ歌広場 if you're interested.
歌広場。
Make a note.
それはカラオケの名前、会社の名前。
そう。it's a chain カラオケね、ショップなんだけど、歌広場ね。歌って書いて、広場。そう。で、I think that's the cheapest one, probably. Yeah, in terms of コスパ。
多分、言わなくちゃいけないのは、そのカラオケをするためにカラオケに行ってるわけじゃない。今回はあゆみはボードゲームをやりたかったからカラオケに行った。そういう役割もあるってこと。その自分が友達と一緒になんか東京でなんかボードゲームとか自分の持ってるカードゲームとか、ただ酒を飲みたかったとか、何でしたっけ、自分が買ったスーパーからの買い物をどこで食べたかったら場合カラオケでも行けるってこと。
it depends on the shop because like you can't bring in food. Some place.
So.
But in Japan it's really hard to find free spaces to do something. So you have to pay for spaces like cafes or karaoke or So that's my suggestion. And Sakura season is coming. I have not seen Sakura yet, but
雨降ってるでしょ？今でも？
yesterday was raining. But like I guess 20 something will be the full bloomed day. So
20 something. 今何？今18日。
Yeah, I guess so.
日本の19日。で、多分先週話したと思うんだけど、先週話したっけ？その満開の1週間ぐらいかかって、その1週間ずっと雨降ってるってことだったよね。
I'm not sure. It is sunny today, at least.
今日だけは。
I don't know. I haven't checked weather focus, so I don't know, but probably it will be sunny for a week. I don't know.
見れるといいね。
That's all.
で、他の、これはニュースじゃないけど、今、4年間ぐらい、5年間、今は2023年だから、日本に行ったのは5年前。ということは、5年間ぐらい、日本に初めて行ってから、作りたかった動画がある。その動画の撮影は今日終わった。次の動画になる。lazyfluency のメインチャンネルの。で、すごく楽しみにしてるから、このことについて、もちろんネタバレしないけど、その5年間ぐらい、その以上の時間、このことについて話したかった。このテーマ。で、一番、今までの動画の中では長い動画になりそう。もちろんあゆみもテーマしてるけど、どのテーマ、どのようなことについての動画を作ってると思いますか、皆様。
様ですか。Leave comments below if you
今日ずっと昨日13時間ぐらい撮影やってたから、で、今朝も5時間かかっちゃったと思うから。で、もちろん日本でもいろんな、その1日で何時間だった？このための動画の撮影は。
More than 5 hours? I don't know.
少なくとも。でもその通勤時間も入れると、8時間かな？とりあえず結構頑張ってるから、もちろんアップロードするときに、ポッドキャストでもお知らせするので、待ってください。多分来週じゃない。できれば来週だけど、再来週かな。わからない。
You can't say,
頑張って。
I will finish next week.
そう。言えないけど、撮影終わった。撮影は完全に終わりました。これからは編集。
So,
それだけ言いたかった。
be excited for the upcoming
楽しみにしてください。
Yep.
And back with the final section. And if you made it to the final section, that means you send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com and or leave a comment on YouTube I don't think you can do it on Spotify, but also drop a review on Apple Podcasts. I mean, can you give a shout out to our Japanese listeners? Maybe convince one of them to write a comment.
日本人の方々、まあ日本人じゃなくてもいいんだけど、日本語でね、コメントだったり、メールを送ってくれると、ね、嬉しいです。はい。
And this week we have a previous commenter who hasn't commented in a while, who's back, Matt. And I will read his message. マット軍団の中のマット。 Yeah, it's yeah. The title being Beep Beep, SUVs are coming for you. So we'll read it now. Wow! I love that video about how much trucks suck. So thank you for mentioning it. Just this morning, I took my 4-year-old daughter to a preschool 2 miles away through town on our bicycles. She's been able to ride without training wheels since before she was 3 on account of a good balance bike training when she was 2. This morning ride was harrowing at times due to all the SUVs and traffic in our mid-sized town. But it's worth it to give her the experience of actually using her own power to traverse the world. I wish more people would do it, although it is a privilege to spend the time and effort in a competitive society. But I wanted to mention that when my wife and I tried to get bigger cars, when we decided to have children, we discovered that exact regulation the video mentioned. We were looking for a station wagon, but kept searching and digging, only to eventually discover that the market had been limited to only SUVs due to the regulation and its exemption for truck-framed monstrosities. Salespeople kept routing us towards crossover vehicles, but the safety ratings on them were garbage, and they had less space anyhow. In the end, we opted for a minivan, but we'd really have preferred a classic wood-paneled, extra-long station wagon. The only ones we could find left in the whole market are only sold in Europe. Anyhow, there are more reasons than not just being killed in collisions for needing SUVs in America. When the whole industry turns against you, things like child safety seats and availability also force people to turn to the dark side. Matt. So this last week we talked about SUVs and light trucks and how awful they are, and there's a video. It's sports. What is it called? Sport utility vehicle. Fundamentally speaking, no, big. So the things that distinguish an SUV are basically they're 4-wheel drive, so all 4 wheels can power the car, and they tend to have a high clearance. So the actual bumper is like high off the ground. If that makes sense.
ジープみたいな感じではないのか。
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, Jeep. But Jeeps, I think, are explicit. I don't know if they're SUVs. I think Jeeps are technically meant specifically for off-road. Like Jeeps are meant for off-road. But yeah, something similar to a Jeep. But so what I wanted to say about this, I find interesting is, I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed the video. But the other thing is it really depresses me when the notion of being able to travel on your, like, currently your 4-year-old daughter has more freedom than I feel like the average American does, who just, you know what I'm saying? Your 4-year-old daughter being able to bike around on her own. And I don't even know the last time actually I've seen somebody, maybe this is rural America problems, but I don't know the last time I've seen somebody straight up even bike. I'm like the only one every time I go out. So I give kudos to your daughter. And I mean, for context, a crossover vehicle is one where you can, I think it's like where you can, I mean, I might be wrong about this. I think it's one where you can like remove the top from the vehicle, or it's like a type of SUV. I can't remember. I'm not a car guy. Yeah. Do you know what a station wagon is? Have you heard of a station wagon?
見た。調べればいいか。
It's like I mean, so there are more modern versions of it, but in my head, a station wagon, it's a car with a big butt, basically, a very long butt that's very kind of squarey, so it can fit a lot in the back, but it's also slim at the front. But the reason station wagons, the reason station wagons, or the benefit to them, is that they can carry a whole lot of people and stuff, and they're a lot safer, lower to the ground, and I mean, yeah, there's a whole bunch of stuff, but that's kind of the video he was talking about. If people haven't seen the video, it was not just bikes. I think it's still the latest video he released. It's a YouTube channel. called Just Ban Them Already or something, or talking about light trucks and SUVs. And I will say, I remembered, I double checked the statistics, and yeah, it was from this in last week, and yeah, it was, I did remember them correctly. It was like SUVs and light trucks, 80% of users, or no, there were two different statistics. One was saying that a YouTuber had checked, he made an experiment where he put a bunch of animals on the road, fake animals, and then he saw what types of cars ran over them. And it turned out that out of the people who intentionally ran over the cars, 80% were driving trucks.
でかいやつね。
Yeah.
見えてないんじゃない？それ見えてないから引いちゃうんじゃないの？
Oh, no. They would swerve. They went like this. Like they literally went out of their way to hit the animal. If you saw it on video, you'd see it looks ridiculous.
それさ、正確に問題あると思うよ、それ。
Yeah, no, that's the problem. So yeah, the first statistics was it was research by, I don't remember who conducted the research, but basically trying to get an idea of what the consumer of a SUV was. And they determined, yeah, like I said, that the person who buys SUVs on average is less community oriented, less likely to volunteer, it was basically everything, less likely to do anything that's helpful, and just complete assholes. And so then I went through a lot of our local, no, straight up, just complete assholes, not connected to the community.
ね、でっかいトラック運転してる人
yeah, well, no.
complete asshole らしいですよ。
Oh, well, so there is an exception. There's the other thing about this comment is that not all people, but those are the people who tend to want to buy them. But at the very end, he said, Matt said that there are more reasons than not just being killed in collisions for needing SUVs in America. So he's saying the child safety and when the whole industry makes it very difficult. And so, yeah, I definitely think that's true. Where like the less options you have, the more likely you are going to just statistically are going to choose an option. But the thing I will say is like 80, I think it's like 80%, like I said, 80% of new cars are also like in the light truck category or something. It's like crazy. It's not like a small amount. Yeah. I don't know if they have them in Japan. It's like American legislation specifically. I don't know if light trucks are or like the classifications of things in Japan. 日本の軽トラクソちっちゃいよ。クソとか言っちゃった。すごくちっちゃいよ。 Yeah. Well, I mean, most all the cars are pretty small.
軽自動車はね、黄色いナンバープレートになるんだよ。それでわかる。
Oh yeah, you should explain that. You should explain that.
そうか、日本thing か。そうね、日本だと軽自動車の定義がよく分かってないんだけど、多分ね、エンジンの強さなのかな。エンジンがどれだけのパワーあるかで、で、まあ、大体形もちっちゃいんだけど、大きさね、ごめん。大きさもちっちゃいんだけど、で、そのちっちゃい車を軽自動車って言って、その軽自動車は、黄色いナンバープレートなの。普通は白なんだけど。
Do they get an advantage of something?
例えば。
Like, do you get like them saying like, I wonder why they have a different plate?
軽自動車の人は軽自動車しか止められない駐車場に止められる。
Oh yeah, I've seen them. You're right. Yeah.
下にラインがあるじゃん。駐車場のね、パーキングロット。
Yeah.
そこに下に K って軽いっていう感じが書いてあるから、そこに止められるの。そんぐらいじゃん。
Oh, and they can just see very easily because they can just look to see the color of your plate.
そう。だから、
So that's pretty cool. So basically, you get dibs on like good parking just by not getting an asshole car.
そうね。だからちっちゃいからね、そういうちっちゃいところに止められるとかね、そんぐらいじゃない。あと小回りが効くっていうのもある。ね、回転じゃない、曲がりやすい。小回りが効くっていうんだけど。そう。
Oh yeah. Like a tight curve sort of.
曲がり、例えばターンするときにこうじゃなくてピッみたいな。
Yeah, I think that's another benefit, but yeah, well, let's get to the next comment. So the next comment is by Oddity, and it goes as follows. I mind your podcast, and Aimi sometimes uses the word ryaku. It's such a stupid word. Not only is it simple, it's an onomatopoeia, and it even means something in English phonetically, but for some reason, my brain refuses to acknowledge it. I'm now certain I will never know it. On the other hand, the word aijo hyōgen, which Aimi only ever used once, is a mouthful to say the least, became permanently imprinted on my brain the minute I understood it. I also keep mixing up shimeru and akeru, which I find quite funny. Anyways, I was wondering if you have similar experiences with words or phrases in both Japanese and English. On this note, what is your take on the contentious topic of pitch accent? So the first one I made is, do you have times where like you have easier times remembering more complicated words and keep like messing up on basics?
難しい言葉。あんまり応用ない。どういうのがあるんだろう。特にないかな。
I mean, maybe you can't remember on the top of your head. Something that I think you mentioned from when I talked to you, but something that's frustrating for you is less words and more grammar.
どういうこと?
As in, when you mention you have problems with English, you tend to mention grammar more than you do words.
どっちもなんだよね。
Were there any words specifically? Was it station wagon?
そうだからそういう知らない言葉は、もちろんわからないからね。
Yeah, but you don't have a... I mean, although I'm not IME, and this was intended for IME specifically, I definitely empathize with that, where basically your brain's a weird thing, and if it decides that it likes a word, it doesn't matter how difficult the word is. So like difficulty is entirely your brain deciding whether it likes something or not, or whether it's important to know something or not. And I feel I definitely have a lot of times where I feel like I'm better at memorizing difficult kanji that have no use cases in natural conversations than I am at a lot of basic times. I'll just make, well, not even like, especially when I'm writing kanji, but also I guess speaking, just a lot of like very common words I'll forget, but then I'll remember in conversation. Like, what was it? I think we've had conversations where like I'm trying to say something basic, but then I end up choosing a word that is like some weird Kogel version of the same word or same verb, and you're just like, what? And I'm like, I think this technically applies in this context. Let me look it up, and you're like, oh yeah, I guess you're right, but who uses that? And I was like, I don't know, I heard it in this thing, and then you're like, you can just use this option instead.
待って、これさ、閉めると開けるをさ、こんがらがっちゃうってことでしょ?
Yeah. So
それはないね。ないよ。
Well, okay, so on the defense for the akeru front, I get mixed up hiraku and akeru all the time.
まあ確かに開くと開けるはね、なんか難しい。うちらもなんとなくなんかニュアンスで使ってるから、どっちもオープンなんだけど、なんか扉の種類でなんか違うとかあるんだよ。開くはなんかこんな感じで、違う、ごめん。開ける。ちょっと待って、ちょっとコンフューズした。開ける。でも開けるこっちにも使えるか。開けるだし。ちょっと私もわかんない。ごめん。けど閉めると開けるは間違いない。
だって。
でもそう、開けると開くはね、よくね、私も生徒を教えてた時になんか違いは何ですかみたいな。ちょっと違いわかんないみたいな。そう。
So, don't feel bad, I guess is the... and what, okay, so the last topic, which is the contentious topic of pitch accent. I think this also might be directed towards you. I don't think pitch accent is contentious to Japanese people. It's just
contentious topic.
I mean, you can go ahead. Content is like sanpiryoron, like controversial. But I think for learners it might be controversial, but for Japanese speakers it's just like, well, go ahead. I mean, what do you think?
これはね、方言によって違うんじゃない？例えば関東だと、じゃあチャップスティックスをまあ箸じゃん。だけどちょっと地方が違うと箸とか言ったりするんじゃない？だから
Well, yeah, the counter argument within the Japanese community would be something like, but everybody learns Hyojungo, so you should also learn Hyojungo because everybody learns Hyojungo.
で全部さ、そのピッチアクセントなんかだってね、文脈が伝わってればね、だってどっちの箸を言ってるかわかるじゃん。ブリッジの方の箸なのか、箸チョップスティックスの方なのか ねえ、だから別にそんな気にしなくて
Or
いいんじゃない？
maybe I know how to rephrase the question. Have you ever felt like you haven't been able to understand someone's Japanese specifically because of their pitch accent?
問題なのがね、私あんま地方の人と友達じゃないからね、全員関東なんだよね。
No. Well, I'm not talking about just Japanese people. I'm talking about non-native speakers. Like when I was speaking to you.
speakers は
Or like you're saying or like Australia whatever accent. Like do you think pitch accent?
いやだってもういやできないって分かってるからさ、可愛いねぐらいじゃない？
Yeah, so that's kind of how I basically I just don't think it's not really controversial for Japanese speakers. There's like a really big deal made about it in like the Japanese community, and the thing is like in the list of things that actively affect your comprehension and your speaking in Japanese. So sorry, comprehension and your speaking, which would be like so communication and comprehension. Out of the things that affect that, I think pitch accent is at the very, very bottom. There's just so many more. Oh, go ahead.
あれすんごくスムーズで、もう日本人並みのピッチアクセントの人は、すごい日本で生まれたのって思うから、すごい努力したんだなとは思う。けどできないからといって、こいつなんか下手くそとか思わない。けどだからすごいスムーズな人はすごいなとは思う。
だって。Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of prioritization from the learner's perspective.
全然 prioritize はしなくていい。一番最後だよ。
It just, I mean, yeah. I mean, for those people wondering, whatever. I'm not even vaguely aware of it. I'm aware of it. I'm aware of like the different tones and all that. I'm aware of like how it changes on different words and stuff like that. But I make actively zero effort, and that's mainly and not because, like I said, I don't think people should. If they don't want to, but like I said, how I view language learning is you do what you find enjoyable. And I'm fundamentally not into Japanese language. I'm into Japanese culture, and the language tended to be attached to that, and therefore I became interested in the language. Therefore, like, I'm really not that interested in. What did you say? Like, I feel like language learning is a very selfish thing. Like, if you fundamentally aren't as interested in one part of it or whatever, then the only person you're going to be hurting by forcing yourself to engage with one part of it is yourself. And so it's kind of like forcing myself to, for Japanese I kind of like a lot of stuff, so it's kind of hard to choose something. And it's not even that I don't like find pitch accent uninteresting. It's just that I find a bunch of other stuff way more interesting. Like I'm really into kanji. I'm not sure if I really mentioned that, but like I can really get into looking into random kanji or memorize or just like a lot of some old Japanese history and stuff like that I get into, but I've never been much in linguistics. And so it's kind of that simple. And so I kind of see comprehension and communication as the most important thing. And even as somebody like me who doesn't really make any effort pitch accent, and this has happened, I've been mistaken as a native Japanese speaker like 6 times by Japanese people. So, and it's happened. It's happened. It's happened. No. I had a whole conversation with it was like thrice in Japan and twice in the embassy in Japanese embassy in Panama. Yeah, and it's happened. But the same, and like the nice lady at the what's it called that we went to this cafe, and this older lady was just like blown away. Yeah. And the thing, so I'm saying if really at the end of the day, like you're kind of aside from having maybe somebody like tip their hat at you, it's very you can achieve whatever level of comprehension and communication you want to achieve. And that's kind of how I see it. But if it's something you find enjoyable and it actively helps you learn the language, then like all power to you. Definitely go ahead and get into all that, what's it called? This intricacies of speaking. That bell means we've reached the end of today's episode. Thanks for joining us in another lazy conversation towards fluency. If you have any language-related questions and are just looking for general advice, send an email to lazyfluency@gmail.com and we might respond to the next episode. Also, make sure to check out our podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and more. We'd appreciate the support. This has been Joey.
and a yummy.
Signing off.
じゃあね
じゃあねー